children were tragically killed by Palestinians, and 179 Palestinian children were tragically killed by Israelis. So I'm sure you'll recall from the previous slide, for the Israeli population, the deaths were down considerably. Not to zero, as one would wish, but they were down considerably for children and for others. So if your only measure is Israel, yes, this is reduced violence. However, for the Palestinian population, it was the opposite. The deaths for Palestinian children had gone up considerably during this alleged reduced violence. And for Palestinians of all ages, the deaths had gone up considerably from previously. We see the same kind of distortion we saw before, in which Israeli deaths are reported in very high percentages, so we are very aware of them, as we should be. However, for Palestinians, we find that the deaths are reported in such low percentages, they are almost invisible to many Americans. Many people will believe that NPR is a more reliable source of information than most media. Pro-Israel organizations have consistently been accusing NPR of coverage they say that is pro-Palestinian. These pro-Israel organizations have caused great damage to NPR affiliates around the country with these very serious accusations. So Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, a media watchdog group, FAIR, that's been around for many years, decided to study NPR to see if those claims were accurate or not. Their researcher, Seth Ackerman, did a very thorough study, and he discovered that NPR actually was very distorted in its coverage of this issue. But once again, we see that it's distorted in a pro-Israel fashion, where Israeli children's deaths are reported almost 90% of the time, Palestinian children's deaths only 20%. Seth gave his study really a brilliant title, I think. He called it The Illusion of Balance, because he found that what NPR had done during that 6-month period was report on have exactly the same number of news reports on Israeli children's deaths as on Palestinian children's deaths. That looked like balance to people, but it was not, because it meant that they were reporting on almost all the deaths among one population and very few of the deaths among another population. That's not balance, that's distortion. In fact, one suggests that's manipulation. By the way, the local NPR affiliate here, Michigan Radio, I'm told, refused to run an announcement by my organization telling about these talks that here in Michigan. I hope to look into that more. I'll answer questions at the end. This kind of distortion, we found, becomes magnified around the country. So in regional news media, often considerably worse than what I've shown you for these national studies. One example is the San Jose Mercury News. In this case, we did a study of front page headlines. Many of us are so busy, that's really all we see of the news for that day. But at least if we scan the front page headlines, we at least see what the big stories of the day are. We discovered that during that period, 121 Israelis had been killed by Palestinians, and 384 Palestinians had been killed by Israelis. How was this covered by front page headlines? Well, they had reversed it. So while this is what was going on, this is what it looked like in front page headlines. This was one of our first studies, and I was astounded. It seemed to me that what if the Mercury News had reported the Super Bowl backwards? What if they'd gotten the World Series wrong? There would have been jokes about them by comedians around the country. And here they were committing a distortion, a reversal of that magnitude, having to do with lives and deaths, and no one noticed it. We hear from the media a great deal about Palestinian weaponry and Israeli suffering, as we should. Suicide bombings are tragic on every conceivable level. When Palestinians wish to deliver a bomb, they have no aircraft or tanks, so missiles, the only way they can do it is to strap it to oneself. We also learned that there are rockets that have been launched from Gaza. We should know this, and we do. This is reported quite a bit. Rarely are we told how many people those rockets have killed, which is interesting considering that we always hear about the rockets. The statistic is, I would think, a significant one. Well, it turns out that in the entire time that they have been launched, they've been launched for maybe about 7 or 8 years, they've killed a total of 18 people. We should also, I feel, learn about Israeli weaponry and Palestinian suffering. I'm sorry, I guess I'm using a different computer than I usually use, so the images are not showing up, but you can picture what they are, and I'll just tell you. Israeli weaponry consists of a few hundred nuclear weapons. Fortunately, these have not been deployed yet. However, what has been deployed are F-16s, very powerful tanks, very powerful Apache helicopter gunships, and really the best weaponry that can be deployed by the 4th or 5th most powerful military on the planet against a population that has no Air Force, no Navy, really